Jürgen Strupp was born on September 26, 1895, in Detmold in a Catholic family. He fought in World War I. Jürgen Strupp joined the Nazi Party in 1932, and already after that he joined the SS, where he made a decent career. By the end of the World War II, he had the rank of Gruppenführer. The executioner's road to new so-called achievements began in 1938, when he took part in the occupation of Czechoslovakia. With the beginning of the Polish campaign, Strupp, who was in Poland at the time, immediately distinguished himself by the mass execution of Poles and Jews of the SS. Then it was the struggle with partisans in Ukraine, participation in combat operations in the Caucasus, after which Strupp was transferred to Greece, where he pursued what he did best, the solving of the Jewish question. Several thousand Greek Jews were transported from Greece under Strupp's personal command to the Auschwitz concentration camp. Afterwards, he was transferred by the chief of police and assessed to Wiesbaden, where Strupp took an active part in the creation of Hitler's subversive organization, which was called Werwolf. What makes this individual so unique is that he was sentenced to death twice. Captured by the Americans on May 8, 1945, Strupp appeared before a US military tribunal at Dachau, where he was charged with shooting airmen who had managed to escape from downed planes. Military investigators proved at least 50 cases of shooting captured officers. And in the year 1947, Strupp was sentenced to death by execution by a US military tribunal, but the intervention of the Polish side made the fate of this executioner, let's say, truly unique. At the request of the Polish government, the Americans handed over the former SS men to the Polish People's Court under extraordinary guarantees, which were later recalled by a negotiator on the Polish side, Kozlowski. I had to sign an undertaking on behalf of the Polish government that if he was not sentenced to death, we would actually return him to the American authorities for execution to take place. Suppression of the rebellion. July 18, 1951. The trial of the POW began at the Land Court in Warsaw. The main charges were three. Strupp had ordered the execution of 100 Poles in Warsaw on July 16, 1943. Also, had actively participated in the mass murder of Polish citizens at the beginning of the war. And finally, he was guilty in the suppression of the uprising in the Jewish ghetto. And if in the first two charges, despite the huge amount of circumstantial evidence, strangely enough, it was not possible to prove Strupp's direct guilt, the third charge, on the other hand, was proved by, well, Strupp himself. His so-called Strupp report, or the Jewish residential quarter in Warsaw no longer exists, was discovered in Berlin in 1948. This is what, in addition to testimony, became the main document confirming Strupp's direct involvement in the mass executions. The uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto began on April 16, 1943, and Strupp was in fact the direct leader of the suppression of the uprising. He received orders from Himmler personally to crush the uprising and wipe the ghetto from the face of the earth. It should be noted that before his execution, the former SS men very often openly praised the Jews of the ghetto for their previous training, which had caused the Nazis a lot of problems, and this is what Strupp said. This Jewish defense industry set up the production of defensive hand grenades, Molotov cocktails, mines, even mortars and grenade launchers, made in industrial conditions from drain pipes and even from torn gun barrels. They had to regularly search military scrap metal warehouses. And in addition, various homemade rifles, pistols, and so-called stalking bombs. As Strupp himself recalled later, the process of cleansing Jewish neighborhoods began with the so-called Rest Ghetto, territory supposedly being voluntarily vacated by Jews themselves. In all fairness, the voluntary liberation of the quarter was due to several other reasons. Since 1942, up to 5,000 Jews were transported daily to the Treblinka concentration camp. So by the time the uprising began, there were indeed fewer people in the Rest Ghetto area. But the Jews, of whom little is spoken, had created a very far-reaching network of long-term defensive points and fortifications. And the very first attempt to storm the Rest Ghetto ended unsuccessfully. The 20mm anti-aircraft guns, despite firing on the buildings almost at point-blank range, had no effect. And then Strupp, using his acquaintances, borrowed some 100mm howitzers. Such a thing had never happened in the history of the World War II. Soon, Stropp invented a fundamentally new approach to suppressing the defensive points. Knowing that battles in the quarters could last for weeks, the SS men, not without pride, talked about the new methodology. A close-up march, then the first firefight. Pull up the artillery. A short offensive. When we get the first wounded, including one Ascaris, I move the flamethrower crews forward. Machine guns keep firing. The fire advances. We are setting fire to the leeward side. We are behind the fire. Slowly we are moving forward, looking for moving targets. Jews jump from windows, balconies, and rooftops. Snipers take aim at the parachuters. According to Stropp, at a minimum 10,000 Jews were hiding in the rest ghetto quarters, so along with howitzers, the bomb squad and flamethrowers were called in. Stropp recalled how the neighborhoods were burned down with blatant delight. The whole complex was set on fire. With fire and smoke, we smoked the Jews after all. My God, how they screamed from the heat and the flames as they were being smoked and roasted over a slow fire. With what joy they surrendered into captivity. True, some committed suicide, and we took the rest out, and now to the wagons sent to Treblinka. However, against the expectations of the SS soldiers, during the first phase of the punitive operation, the rest ghetto managed to destroy or capture about half of them. The remaining 5,000 managed to secretly withdraw from the quarter to other areas of the ghetto. The cleansing operations took place every single day, and by May of 1943 there were already about 30,000 Jews in captivity, who were immediately sent to Treblinka for extermination. But they were still considered lucky. The worst that Stropp did was to order at Easter holiday to set fire to the houses where the rebels were hiding and to put fire in the sewers. As a true Aryan man, he was sympathetic to everything that involved flames, especially since the heat caused the ammunition warehouse to explode and the Easter hell lasted for over a day. I ordered the commanders of these groups to burn houses whenever there was the slightest resistance from the resistors. As a result, after a few hours, the entire area that was being scoured began to burn. The Jews fled from the fire and smoke, but sometimes returned to their old positions. The true hell began to break loose. By 16th of May, 1943, a total of 45,000 Jews were taken prisoner. The number of those murdered, killed by suicide, burned, and killed under the rubble of blown-up buildings is unknown. According to estimates of the Polish prosecutor's office, during the suppression of the uprising, more than 10,000 people were killed. 45,000 people sent to Treblinka were also victims who were destroyed on the infamous death conveyor. In his report to Himmler, Stropp himself gave the following statistics. A total of 56,065 Jews were captured or certainly killed. On the same day, May 16, 1943, to symbolize victory, Stropp ordered the bombing of the synagogue. He personally pushed the button. For a painter or stage designer, for example, it would have been an amazing, fantastic picture. I stretched out a moment of anticipation, then I shouted, Heil Hitler, and pressed the button. An explosion of fire clouded up to the clouds. There was a terrific boom, a sea of fire and color, an unforgettable moment of triumph over Jewry. The Warsaw Ghetto ceased to exist. The last statement, said by Stropp, was the title of the document sent to Himmler. Trial and Conviction. During the court trial, Stropp did not plead guilty. He claimed that as a soldier he was only following orders. The case file is rather explicit about this.
Stropp's general thesis was based on two key elements. As a soldier and officer of the Third Reich, and as a German, Stropp had to follow the orders of his commanders carefully and faithfully.
On July 23, 1951, the court sentenced Jürgen Stropp to death by hanging. As a person devoid of all human feelings, a fascist executioner who tortured his victims, the total exile of such people from human society is necessary. The Nazi war criminal was executed on March 6, 1952, in Mokoro prison. The Poles did not have to hand over Stropp for execution, since they hanged him themselves. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe and get notified when new videos come out on X War history, and also leave a like.